Hi, it's Michael Akers. Welcome to my channel, Ask Akers Nutrition. This week's video is an addendum to my $20 budget challenge video. With just a few pantry staples and a couple of extra spices, you could add 3 extra dishes to the menu. Banana peel curry chutney, carnita-style pulled peels in barbecue sauce, and, believe it or not, wait for it, banana peel bacon. Does it taste good? Find out when we come back. First of all, this week, I just want to say thank you to everyone who subscribed, liked, left comments to my channel. It really means a lot. Frankly, I'm overwhelmed with the response. It's a dietitian's dream to have people asking for more nutrition advice, so you can count me in on that. A big shout out to C. Mindy Mom and Frugal Fit Mom for sharing my channel with you. It really means a lot. I want you to know that I'm taking your comments and suggestions to heart. There's a couple of ideas for some future videos that I'm already hard at work on that I got straight from your comments. Make sure you subscribe so that way you know when I post them. This week's video was inspired by 2 comments that I got that revolved around the same theme, and that is food waste. If you'll recall, I made vegan ice cream in that $20 budget challenge video, and I peeled 5 bananas and I tossed the banana peels into the compost bin. Well, that turns out that's pure craziness because banana peels are a perfectly legit edible food ingredient. So this week I'm making 3 very different dishes using banana peels so we can test out just how versatile this ingredient is. And more importantly, just how good do these things taste. I've never had them before, so we'll try them together for the first time right here, right after the demo. And of course, I'll be back with the nutrition facts and hit you with that info as well. Let's get cooking. I got the recipes for today's dishes straight from the internet, and I'm going to put them in the link below. They're easy to find. I tried to find recipes that had as few ingredients as possible. I wanted to showcase the banana peel, so I was looking for things that were basically banana peels and spices. Banana peel recipes seem to come in 2 categories. Recipes that call for unripe, greener bananas, and recipes that call for darker, more ripe, yellow skin, maybe even with brown spot banana peels. Bananas vary in starch and sugar content by their ripeness, so I was kind of curious how this would affect if on a recipe, if that does anything to the skin, if ripening changes the skin in any way. Of course, you can't research banana peel recipes without running into a major controversy, and that is whether or not you should even eat them at all. There are a lot of people who are wary of the pesticides that are on banana peels. A lot of fruits and vegetables have pesticides, and they have to be cleaned thoroughly before you eat them, especially any fruit and vegetable that you plan to eat the peel, so bananas would be no different. Based on what I found, the pesticides on banana peels are required to be water soluble. Thoroughly washing your bananas should be as safe as thoroughly washing any other fruit or vegetable. Of course, pesticides aren't the only thing that are probably on your banana peels. They've traveled quite far to get here, and cleaning them is always a good idea, even if you decide to buy organic. Of course, the method of washing them is another controversy. I found a lot of suggestions on the internet that you should wash them in baking soda, you should wash them in vinegar, you should wash them in soap, but based on all the credible sources that I looked at, the safest and most effective way to clean your fruits or vegetables from pesticides is to use water. I know, I was surprised. If you use another method, definitely let us know in the comments. I could tell after I washed these thoroughly under running water that there was no more residue, no more shiny wax on these banana peels, and I felt as though they were safe to eat. If you're unsure about pesticides on banana peels, definitely check out organic peels. Now that I've decided that I'm going to eat these peels, let's get on with the recipe. I'm starting with the banana peel bacon because it takes the longest time. The banana peel bacon recipe is quite simple. There's a lot of seasonings to it, but it's not a complex dish. It starts with 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of liquid smoke, a 1/4 teaspoon smoked paprika, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon black pepper. I'm kind of combining 2 recipes. The one recipe called for 1 teaspoon of brown sugar, and I opted to use the other recipe's recommendation of a tablespoon of maple syrup because I thought smoked maple bacon flavor sounded delicious. There's Mr. Snickers. Snickers loves bananas, so whenever you're working with a banana, you know he's going to show up. This marinade looks really delicious. It's got this great, beautiful, bright, shiny color. I gave it a taste. Frankly, the marinade alone doesn't taste a whole lot like anything. It's just a lot of smoky spices and liquid smoke. It's not too sweet with the maple syrup. It's a little nondescript, honestly. I've never actually tried to take peels off that I plan to cook with. Usually I do the, pull the top, peel the banana, eat the fruit situation. So processing the bananas is fairly straightforward. We're just going to cut off the tops and bottoms. It calls for using bananas that are somewhat ripe. So I'm choosing some bananas with yellower skin. I don't know why I was surprised, but the banana does peel just literally along the seams into pieces in like panels, in like literally in strips of things that clearly look like they are going to be bacon. There's Mr. Snickers getting his payoff in banana pieces. He loves bananas. Who goes bananas for bananas? Some of the banana peel recipes call for scraping the inside of the banana peel and only eating basically the skin of the banana. I've never done this before, and so I was pretty excited because I love to try new techniques. I thought maybe the banana peel was going to break or shred while I was doing it, but banana peels are tougher than you think. It was really no problem to just scrape off the inside of the banana peel, leaving this very skinny, flimsy little piece of banana peel. Just have to toss these things into the marinade, give them a good mix around so they get coated on all sides. Just repeat this process till I have all these lovely peels in the marinade. All of the recipes I found suggest soaking the banana peels for several hours to overnight. For today's experiment, I was going to soak it for as long as it takes to make the other recipes and then cook it last. Banana peels do expire pretty fast, as we know that a banana and a banana peel will turn brown pretty quickly, so you maybe have up to a day of a banana peel being in the refrigerator before it might not be all that usable. This bacon recipe could be a good way to use banana peels on a more regular basis, because you could use your banana in the morning in your cereal or a smoothie, and then you could scrape the peel out and throw it into this marinade. Otherwise, it seems to me that these recipes work better if you did a recipe that called for several bananas at once, say if you're making a banana bread, or if you're making a batch of smoothies for the week, or again if you're making vegan ice cream like I did in my $20 meal budget challenge. You can make one of these dishes pretty easily. Just going to toss these around in the marinade, get them coated on all sides. Since it called for scraping the inside of the peel, I was kind of curious, like, what does that taste like? I taste a little piece. It is bitter. I do not recommend it. Really, really bitter. Even in that ripe, sweet banana, the inside of the banana peel was very bitter. Here's all that's left to compost when you process banana peels for another recipe. Definitely a lot less waste. Next up is the curry chutney. I want to get that started. We are going to boil the banana peels in this recipe. This recipe calls for greener bananas, unripe bananas, which makes sense since you're probably looking for a blander flavor. The process is similar to pulling the peels off of the bananas. However, we don't have to scrape these according to the recipe. We just need to cut them up into big chunks and get them into the boiling water. Banana peels also can be used kind of as a neutral filler in things like meatballs, burgers, even a banana peel steak. Could blend the whole thing into a smoothie, but banana peel raw is kind of, we'll say, tart. You can use the whole banana in banana bread or other baked goods. And I've noticed that green banana peels are thicker. I'm kind of curious what happens to banana peels when you boil them. They need to boil for about 15 minutes. And now it's time to start my pulled peels. This recipe was basically just peels in some southwestern seasonings. Start with 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil, a teaspoon of paprika, 3/4 teaspoon each of chili powder, dry mustard, garlic powder, and onion powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, and a little bit of water. Much like the bacon, the marinade has a beautiful shimmer to it. It looks really tasty. I love southwestern seasoning mixes. I'm pretty familiar with this blend of spices, so I kind of have an idea in my mind already what this is going to taste like, except for, of course, the banana peel. This recipe called for yellow, firm, but not quite ripe bananas. It said there should still be tinges of green. Mine might have been just a little bit less ripe than was called for in the recipe, but I wasn't sure it would make too much of a difference. This recipe also calls for scraping out the peel. Without giving away the ending, I think I might have possibly scraped them a little too thin, much like the bacon. I'm not sure how to take this much meat out of them. Since it was my first time, I figured there's a learning curve. And of course, if you cook with banana peels a little more often, then you'll probably just get second nature on how you want to prepare them. The peels are done boiling. For the chutney, it kind of changed color and definitely looked poached. I want to drain those really well. Apparently eating banana peels broke the internet a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if it started with the curry chutney or if it started with the pulled peels. In Brazil they have a dish called carne louca, or crazy meat, which is sort of a pulled pork style dish. They also have a dish called casca louca, which means crazy peels, which is banana peels that are shredded with other vegetables and seasonings. Someone called banana peels pulled pork here in America, and the internet, of course, went insane because people don't like to call things vegan pork. I think pulled peels has a great ring of all of its own, so I'm electing to call them pulled peels. Kind of the part that I was excited about was shredding these. The recipe calls for taking a fork to these things and kind of shredding them somehow. I didn't think that was going to work. Maybe because my bananas were a little too green, I elected instead to just stack them up and cut them into thin strips myself. Looking back, maybe even a little thinner, or if I had a sharper fork, maybe I would try it. You sort of think of a banana peel as this flimsy thing, but it's actually got quite a lot of integrity to the skin. I certainly was getting very curious at this point to know what these things were going to taste like, because I have never eaten banana peels and this all just seemed crazy to me at this point. Never even thought about eating them. But all the ingredients that I'm putting the peels into are certainly tasty. One note that I have about this recipe is that for 2 bananas, I thought this seemed like a lot of spices. I was just curious to see how it tasted at the end of the process, because I thought that was a lot of spices for just a couple of banana peels. Okay, while those were marinating a little bit in those spices, I'm going to turn my attention to making the rest of the chutney. The chutney was the one dish that has a few more ingredients. The recipe called for 5 banana peels, but I'm having the recipe because this is an experiment and I just am kind of curious how these different recipes work out. 5 bananas sounds like a lot of food. I also read that Nigella Lawson, who I love, her cookbooks are amazing, had a curry chutney dish that also broke the internet because she used banana peels in a chutney. So a tablespoon of vegetable oil, a 1/4 teaspoon mustard seeds, so I went with a 1/2 teaspoon of ground mustard, 2 cloves of garlic, a small onion. You're supposed to fry the mustard seeds in oil till they start to pop, so I opted to add the mustard powder to the oil, fried a little bit along with the garlic and onions. Some red pepper flakes to taste. While the onion and garlic are sauteing, I'm going to get the bacon started. In the movies, this looked like I had just put this in a minute ago, but it had been quite a while. The bacon recipe says to start with a cold pan. You put the peels on a cold pan with some oil and then start heating it up from there, nice and slow. It's probably just about here where I realized that I was supposed to half the recipe and I was supposed to use half that onion and probably half that mustard powder. I'm pretty guilty of this when I'm halving a recipe. I always forget to half the spices. However, I didn't think it was going to make too big of a difference in the final dish. It was a pretty small onion. That's getting some nice color. The chutney calls for the meat of 1 banana. Again, in halving the recipe, I'm going to need half the banana. You can see that the banana peels start sweating. A lot of the moisture is starting to come out of those. It's a slower process, but it smelled really good already. It called for 1/2 a jalapeno, which somehow I missed when I was doing my grocery shopping. I always keep a jar of pickled jalapenos around, so I opted to give those a shot. I don't think they'd make much difference because the whole thing is going to go in the food processor at the end. And it's time to add the banana peels, but I did finish the recipe by having the spices. I put in a 1/2 a teaspoon of the curry powder and 1/2 of the 1 tablespoon of turmeric, which is 1 1/2 teaspoons. Just like the pulled peels, I thought this seemed like a lot of spices. So since both recipes seemed overly seasoned, I was kind of curious if it was something that I was doing or some difference in the banana peels that I had gotten. All right, everything's underway. It's time to saute the pulled peels. It calls for adding a little bit of water to a hot pan and kind of steaming them out a little bit. I know the internet is all excited about eating raw banana peels right now. In general, I think they taste terrible. The recipe calls for flipping the bacon several times throughout the process to get them cooked evenly on both sides. Add half the banana meat back to the chutney and let that all steam out. The bacon just suddenly will start to get dark and get this sort of smoky, burning char to it, and I set it out to rest. At the end of the cooking, the peels are supposed to get some barbecue sauce. I thought they were already pretty heavily seasoned in my opinion, and it didn't really need the barbecue sauce, but I did want to follow the recipes all the way out to the end so we could see what they tasted like. Of course, in the future then they could be adjusted. The chutney just says to pulse a bit, bring it down to a smooth consistency. That didn't take too much. The peels were pretty softened in the cooking process. Ultimately, I felt like this was a good consistency. We're going to get that served up and bring it to the table. Check it out. It had a nice bright color to it. In all my nutrition research, I didn't find out whether dogs can have banana peels. Mr. Snickers was not happy about that. The banana peels have gotten pretty stiff in the cooking process. They look just like bacon. It's kind of astounding. All right, so it's time to plate up these dishes and do a final taste test. We have banana peel bacon, we have carnita style pulled peels, and banana peel curry chutney. It's time to eat. Okay, I am excited. I have never had banana peels before, and I'm really curious what this tastes like. So I think we'll start with the pulled peels, this carnita style in the barbecue sauce. It's very interesting. It kind of looks like shredded pork or some sort of shredded meat. It's got that same stringy look. It's got a very good chew to it. Like I did say, I think that the spices were just a little bit too much for this ratio of banana peel. But considering that's a couple of peels, you could get a couple of sandwiches out of that. In all honesty, I'm not sure that you have to add the extra spices because the barbecue sauce is sort of overwhelming everything. But very interesting. Doesn't taste like bananas at all. I'll just have one more bite. Next up is the banana peel curry chutney. I love curry. And this made a lot, considering it's just a couple of banana peels and one banana. Surprisingly, the banana flavor is very mild. There's a slight sweetness to it, but it's not shockingly overwhelmingly banana. I do think that the spices are a little bit heavy. It's a little too much turmeric and curry powder for my particular taste. They're not really balanced out, but I think this is a really great overall base you could use as an inspiration to make any sort of dip because the banana peels became so neutral. It's pretty good. Worth trying. And finally, the moment that we've all been waiting for is this amazing looking banana peel vegan bacon. I mean, it looks like bacon. Did you hear that crunch? That's incredible. Like, those skins got completely crispy. Oh my goodness. Wow. That is actually really good. It's got that kind of burn, crispy, smoky flavor. There is no way that you would know that this is a banana peel. You might not necessarily 100% mistake it for actual bacon, but man, that's good. If you're vegan or just watching what you eat, don't eat pork, this could be a really good way to make maybe like a BLT, a big slice of tomato and avocado, some really good bread. All right, so let's jump into the nutrition. Banana peels have a lot going on in this department. The first big claim is that banana peels are high in vitamin B12. This is really good news for vegans because B12 usually comes from animal sources and dairy products. So strict vegans can have a hard time getting enough B12 in their diet. So it'd be great to add banana peels to one of the few plant sources of vitamin B12. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to validate that claim at this time. I couldn't find a study or a piece of literature that showed that there's a lot of vitamin B12 in banana peels. So if any of you happen to know where that claim is coming from, please leave it in the comments below. Surprisingly, banana peels are high in antioxidants, and that is because they contain something called phytochemicals, which is basically the pigment that's in the skin. The yellow pigment is called a carotenoid, and those are potent antioxidants. You might know carotenoids from its more famous vegetable, the carrot. Carotenoids are a bioactive compound that go around scavenging free radicals, which are basically the oxidant part of antioxidants, and free radicals are created in the body from bad diet, stress, lack of sleep. There's lots of ways in which the body creates oxidants. The typical Western diet is unfortunately high in free radicals, and so having something like this that's high in antioxidants is kind of a fun way to add this healthy part in your diet. Carotenoid levels also vary with the type of banana, so every banana that you find isn't necessarily going to have the same amount of pigment in it. Banana peels are also strangely high in catecholamines. What the heck is a catecholamine? These are kind of mood stabilizers, and they also help to level out digestion. You might recognize dopamine or even epinephrine. The research on this is really interesting, but it's also really new. The amount of banana peels that you actually have to eat so these catecholamines would have an effect on you is a little questionable. All right, that's it for this week. Definitely hit me up with your suggestions and comments, and let us know if you're using banana peels in your recipes at home. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll know when those new videos land. I'll see you next time here on Ask Akers.